It's an African practice in terms of communicating from one to the other. And then this morphed into a needed practice. Please remember that African music is a practical music. It's always meant to make the desirable happen. So the next music was work song. It doesn't take us much to figure out why work songs were so important. But then out of that work song became a thing that became called the spirituals. That's what it was called first. And then a group of college students from a university called Fisk University in Tennessee traveled to Europe and sung some of those work songs and some of those spirituals. And the world took note. And from that point on, all eyes and ears were on America for music. Out of those Negro spirituals, and W.E.B. Du Bois, some of you may know him, check him out, calls these songs the sorrow songs. But of course, there was a need for some music on Saturday night. So then the blues came along. Music called the blues. Now the blues is a music that is identified in clear terms with a particular woman in Black American culture called Ma Rainey. In fact, she's called the queen of the blues. I don't know if y'all have heard of Ma Rainey. If anybody is, I shouldn't say old as me, but as mature as me, you might have heard of a song, let's see. Well, she's got several songs. Let me see what I got on Ma Rainey here. I took some notes in preparation for this. She became a, let me give you these notes. She was born in 1986. She passed to the hereafter in 1939. She was one of the first known professional blues singers. You know, there were probably many, many before her. And she's known as the mother of the blues. Over 100 recordings. One of the ones that I can recall is C.C. Rider. Oh, C.C. Rider. Anybody heard of that before?
Yeah.
It's been covered by a lot of folks, you know. And the Black Bottom Blues is another one I can identify with. Her actual name was Gertrude Pritchett. She lived in Columbus, Georgia. And she started out with the black minstrel shows. You got to be a real student of history to understand the whole minstrel cycle thing. You know, it was European mimicking of African or black, the culture of blacks initially. And blacks say, hey, you know, this stuff is paying tickets, for people buying tickets. So they start doing their own minstrel shows and get some of the money too. But out of that came the blues. And that was celebrated all over. From the blues, we got rhythm and blues developed from that. From, also we have, in 1920s, there was a thing called, Ragtime with Scott Joplin. And then there was a jazz era. And out of the jazz era, another woman began to surface. Y'all heard of Betsy Smith? Blues and jazz kind of stuff. Another African-American woman who's made of note. And then the rhythm and blues brought up the soul music. And of course, the queen of the blues is Aretha Franklin. And what developed from the rhythm and blues? Well, according to a man called Little Richard, rock and roll. He was the very first rock and roll artist. Little Richard, he came from the same seed. Started in Jamestown. But out of that seed came a music that we all call country, and we celebrate it. My wife loves it because it tells some really nice stories. And out of the rhythm and blues came a thing called disco. Anybody ever danced with the disco ball happening? You know, y'all been through that? Did y'all go through that? You got your boy there? Well, when the kids in New York got tired of that ball going round and round and round, and the music going round and round and round, and when they needed a means of expression, they developed a thing called rap. And it merged into a thing that we now call hip hop. It's been around for 40 years. And though many of us can look at it with a jaundiced eye, it would behoove us to take a closer look. The story is a lot greater, a lot more potent than you might imagine. It is perhaps the latest and greatest expression. It all came from the same seed of African musics in the America. And getting back to one particular lady, and I want to mention her because some people just see her as a hustler. But African women in America have always had to hustle. That's what they have to do. You gotta hustle. You got to get the corn cakes on the stove. You got to do something. You got kids. But this particular one was a lady who called Sylvia Robinson. Anybody ever hear of her? Sylvia Robinson sung back in the 50s, Mickey and Sylvia. Love is strange. Oh, man, I'm giving myself something away, right? Okay. But anyway, when hip-hop began to surface in the Bronx and in Harlem, she heard the music and she saw dollar bills. And you know what she did? She got together a group of kids, and some of them were not even noted, and put them in the studio, and they created the very first rap album. The group was just put together, hodgepodge of kids, roundaway kids, and it was, they did the very first recording. Sugar Hill Gang, they're called. She named her studio Sugar Hill Recording Studio. But from that one little thing, when she did that, and the radio stations all over the country, particularly the ones that played R&B, would say, hey, we're not having it. They didn't want any parts of it. But guess what happened? When the interest of the dollar began to surface, that one recording transformed itself over 40 years into a multi-billion-dollar industry. And the rest is history. So, you know, James Brown would describe this as the big payback, right? Thank you.